I am Rebecca Mitchell, 32 years old, and I have always been the invisible sister. The one nobody expected much from. The family afterthought. My sister Megan's elaborate Thanksgiving dinner was going exactly as expected, with her subtle jabs and dismissive glances making me shrink further into my chair. 6 years of military service. And to them, I was still just the underachiever who couldn't match Megan's perfect life. But nobody, especially not my smirking sister, expected what happened when the doorbell rang. If you're watching from a place where family has underestimated you too, drop a comment below and subscribe to see how I finally stood my ground. Growing up in suburban Boston shaped our family dynamic in ways I'm still unpacking. Our parents, both high-achieving professionals, set the bar impossibly high. Dad was chief surgeon at Massachusetts General, and Mom was a corporate attorney who somehow still managed to attend every school function. They were respected, accomplished, and expected nothing less from their daughters. Then there was Megan, my older sister by 3 years. The golden child in every sense of the word. She was valedictorian of her class, homecoming queen for 2 consecutive years, and president of more clubs than I could count. Her report cards were framed. Her trophies occupied the living room mantel. Her face was plastered across our family photo albums, always center stage, always shining. I was the other daughter, not unsuccessful by normal standards, but standing next to Megan's blinding glow. I might as well have been invisible. My solid B's were met with "you could try harder," while her A's earned weekend celebrations. When I made the softball team, Dad patted my head and said, "That's nice," before turning to praise Megan for being accepted to debate nationals. "Rebecca just doesn't apply herself," my mother would say, not bothering to lower her voice even when I was in the next room. If she just focused like Megan does, she could accomplish so much more. The summer before high school, I discovered photography. I saved up for months to buy a decent camera and took a community class. When I proudly displayed my first exhibition piece at the local library, my parents showed up an hour late because Megan's college campus tour ran long. They stayed 15 minutes, just enough time to ask why I couldn't have chosen something more practical. While Megan followed our parents' carefully plotted course through an Ivy League education and into a prestigious marketing firm, I found myself drawn to something entirely different. Structure. Purpose. Service. The military recruitment office downtown became my secret refuge during my senior year of high school. The recruiters there saw something in me that my family never did. Potential. "You've got a sharp mind and good instincts," Sergeant Lewis told me after our third conversation. "The military could use someone like you." When I announced my decision to enlist after graduation, the family reaction was exactly what I expected. "The military." My mother's voice climbed an octave. "Rebecca, that's for people who don't have other options." "It's just so aggressive," my father added, looking genuinely confused. "You've always been such a quiet girl." Megan's response cut deepest. "Well, I guess not everyone can get into Princeton," she said with a sympathetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. "The military is respectable." By then, Megan was already dating Ryan, her future husband. He worked in commercial real estate development and came from old money. Their wedding 2 years later was featured in Boston Magazine. 300 guests, ice sculptures, and a honeymoon in the Maldives. I attended in my dress blues, which my mother asked me not to wear because it might distract from the bride. Their house in Brookline became the gathering place for family events. 6 bedrooms, a 3-car garage, and a backyard that looked like it belonged in Better Homes and Gardens. Thanksgiving at Megan and Ryan's became an annual tradition, one that showcased their picture-perfect life while the rest of us served as supporting characters in the Megan show. Every year, I debated skipping it. Every year, some sense of family obligation pulled me back. This year had been particularly difficult to justify. I had just returned from an overseas deployment, was adjusting to new responsibilities after my promotion, and frankly, Needed rest more than I needed another helping of Megan's judgment served alongside the turkey. You should just cancel. Amanda, my closest friend from the unit, advised during our coffee meetup the week before. Family or not, you don't deserve that treatment. I know, I sighed, stirring my latte. But if I don't go, it just confirms what they think of me. That I can't handle real pressure, real success. Military work doesn't count to them. Amanda rolled her eyes. If they only knew what you actually do. I smiled tightly. They never will. And maybe that's for the best. So once again, I found myself packing an overnight bag, selecting a conservative sweater and slacks that wouldn't give Megan anything to criticize, and preparing myself mentally for the annual ritual of feeling like I was still 16 and falling short of expectations. What I didn't prepare for was how this particular Thanksgiving would shatter the family dynamic we'd maintained for 3 decades. My first day of basic training nearly broke me. I had always considered myself reasonably fit, but the physical demands pushed me beyond anything I had experienced before. 5 miles into our run, my lungs burning and legs threatening to buckle. I thought about my family. About how they expected me to fail, to come crawling back admitting I had made a mistake. That thought alone pushed me through the last mile. Mitchell. My drill sergeant barked after I collapsed across the finish line. You looked like death out there. I struggled to my feet, bracing for criticism. Yes, Sergeant. A hint of approval flickered across his face. But you didn't quit. Remember that feeling? Those words became my mantra through the grueling weeks that followed. The pre-dawn wake-ups. The endless drills. The nights so exhausted I could barely remove my boots before sleep claimed me. I wasn't the strongest recruit or the fastest. But I discovered something about myself that surprised me. I was resilient. When aptitude tests revealed I had an unusual capacity for pattern recognition and analytical thinking, my path shifted. The military intelligence recruiter explained the program would be twice as demanding as what I had already endured, but it offered specialized training few civilians would ever access. You have the mind for this work, she said, reviewing my scores. The question is, do you have the commitment? I thought about Megan's condescending smile when I had last visited home on leave. Well, the military is fine for now, she had said. But what's your actual career plan? I'm all in. I told the recruiter. The next 3 years transformed me. Advanced training in signals intelligence, cryptologic analysis, counterintelligence operations. I discovered that my quiet, observant nature, the very trait my family had dismissed as a weakness, was actually my greatest strength. I could see patterns others missed, connect disparate information into meaningful intelligence, and maintain the calm focus needed during critical operations. My first deployment came with little warning. A midnight call. 48 hours to prepare and a destination I wasn't allowed to share with my family. Just tell them you're going overseas, my commanding officer advised. The less detail, the better. My mother sounded distracted when I called to tell her. Oh, be careful, dear. Did I tell you Megan just landed the Westfield account? The partners are considering her for early promotion. That deployment lasted 9 months. I worked 18-hour days in a windowless command center, analyzing intelligence that directly supported field operations. When the Joint Task Force successfully neutralized a high-value target based on intelligence my team had provided, the unit commander personally commended our work. Lives were saved because of what you did here, he told us. I received my first promotion faster than expected, then my second. By my 4th year, I had been recruited into a specialized division within Special Operations Command, where my analytical capabilities could be applied to the most sensitive intelligence operations. The security clearance process was exhaustive, the training more demanding than anything that had come before. But I thrived. My superiors recognized what my family never had. I possessed exceptional focus, unflappable calm under pressure, and a natural ability to synthesize complex information. These weren't just useful skills. They were critical in the environments where we operated. Last month, I received my promotion to major along with a commendation I couldn't share with anyone outside my unit. The operation details would remain classified for decades, but the outcome had averted a crisis that would have made international headlines had it not been prevented. Captain James Walker had been the pilot who extracted our team under extremely dangerous conditions. His skill and courage under fire had been nothing short of remarkable. When he later sought me out to thank me for the intelligence that had prepared his crew for the mission, we developed a professional respect that was rare across different military branches. "Your intel was so precise, we knew exactly what to expect," he said during a debriefing. That kind of accuracy saves lives. The night before Thanksgiving, Amanda called to check in. We had served together for 3 years before she transferred to Fort Bragg, and she remained my closest confidant. "Are you really going through with this family torture session?" she asked. I laughed, phone tucked between my shoulder and ear as I packed. "It's tradition. Besides, Mom would never forgive me if I skipped Megan's big show. You could always show up in your dress uniform with all your medals. That would shut them up. And militarize a family dinner? No thanks. Besides, you know most of what I do isn't exactly dinner conversation." "Fine," Amanda sighed. "But promise you'll call me after. I want a full report on Queen Meghan's court." I promised. Tossing a simple black sweater into my bag. No uniform. No visible signs of my rank or achievements. Just Rebecca, the family underachiever, reporting for another year of subtle degradation. What I didn't realize was that events had already been set in motion that would make this Thanksgiving unforgettable. Meghan's house looked like it had been transported straight from a Thanksgiving edition of Architectural Digest. The sprawling colonial was outlined with tasteful white lights, and an elaborate autumn wreath adorned the glossy black door. Pumpkins and gourds, undoubtedly sourced from some artisanal farm, lined the brick walkway. Even the air smelled perfectly seasonal. Cinnamon and cloves wafting from somewhere inside. I parked my modest Toyota between Ryan's Range Rover and my father's Mercedes, already feeling the familiar sense of inadequacy settling over me. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed my overnight bag and the bottle of wine I had brought, then made my way to the front door. Meghan answered on the second knock, perfectly coiffed and wearing an apron that somehow looked fashionable rather than functional. Her smile tightened almost imperceptibly when she saw me. "Rebecca, you made it." Her eyes traveled down my outfit, a simple black sweater and gray slacks. "Still loving the minimalist look, I see." Before I could respond, she was calling over her shoulder. "Ryan." "Rebecca's here." Ryan appeared, handsome in a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Hey, Becca," he said, using the nickname I had repeatedly asked him not to use. "How's the military treating you?" "It's good," I said, stepping inside and handing him the wine. "Thanks for having me." "Of course. Your family. We'd never leave you alone on Thanksgiving." Meghan's tone suggested she deserved a medal for including her own sister. The house smelled amazing, I had to admit. Meghan led me through the foyer, past the formal living room where I glimpsed a table setting that belonged in a magazine, and into the kitchen where she was clearly in her element. "Mom and Dad should be here any minute. The Carmichaels are coming too, and Uncle Steve and Aunt Patricia. Oh, and Cousin Lisa with her new husband." She glanced at me. "You can put your bag in the guest room upstairs. The blue one. Not the green one. We're saving that for the Carmichaels." I nodded, familiar with the hierarchy. The blue guest room was nice, but significantly smaller than the green one. And its bathroom lacked the jacuzzi tub. In Meghan's world, accommodations were allocated according to perceived importance. I had barely settled my things when the doorbell announced my parents' arrival. From the top of the stairs, I watched their entrance. My mother's exclamations over the decorations. My father's firm handshake with Ryan. The gifts they presented to Meghan, beautifully wrapped packages that made my bottle of wine look even more inadequate. Taking another steadying breath, I descended to join them. "Rebecca," my mother air-kissed both my cheeks. "You look healthy." In our family, this was code for, you could stand to lose a few pounds. "The military must be feeding you well," my father added, reinforcing the point. "Dad, I work at a desk most days," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "Intelligence analysis isn't exactly physically demanding." "Intelligence, huh?" He nodded absently, already turning back toward Megan, who was describing the imported truffles she had sourced for one of the appetizers. The next hour passed in a blur of arrivals and small talk. Uncle Steve asking if I had shot any bad guys lately, clearly having no concept of what my job actually entailed. Aunt Patricia wondering if I had met any nice military men yet. Cousin Lisa showing off her enormous diamond ring while her new husband talked hedge funds with Ryan. I found myself retreating to the kitchen, offering to help with preparations. Megan assigned me the task of arranging the crudite platter, which I knew would be critiqued and likely rearranged once I finished. "So, Rebecca," Mrs. Carmichael said, finding me alone in the kitchen, "what exactly do you do in the military?" Megan mentioned something about office work. Before I could answer, Megan swept in with a tray of something that smelled divine. "Oh, Rebecca helps with paperwork and things. Very important, of course." She smiled at me with that familiar blend of condescension and pity. "Not everyone is cut out for the corporate world." Mrs. Carmichael nodded sympathetically. "Well, the military needs support staff too." I bit my tongue and continued arranging vegetables. From the adjacent dining room, I could hear my mother proudly detailing Megan's recent promotion. "Senior marketing director at only 35, she was saying. "The youngest in the firm's history. And they just got back from Bali," my father added. Ryan closed that resort deal. I slipped out to use the bathroom, needing a moment alone. In the hallway, I overheard Megan's voice floating from the pantry, where she was apparently grabbing more supplies. "Rebecca's still just in the military," she was telling someone, likely our mother. "I think she processes forms or something." You know how she always struggled with direction. My fingers curled into fists at my sides. 6 years of intensive training, classified operations, and life-or-death decisions reduced to processing forms. I considered walking in and correcting her, but what could I say? Most of my work was classified, and the parts that weren't would sound insignificant without context. Besides, a lifetime of experience had taught me that in this house, my achievements would always be minimized while Megan's were amplified. I unclenched my hands and returned to the kitchen, pasting on the pleasant, unobtrusive smile that had become my family armor. Dinner was about to begin, and with it, the real performance of the evening. I just didn't realize yet that the script was about to change dramatically. Megan's dining room looked like a Thanksgiving tableau created by professional stylists. The massive oak table gleamed under soft lighting, set with china that had belonged to our grandmother and crystal glasses that caught and reflected the light from the tapered candles running down the center. Name cards in perfect calligraphy marked each place setting, with guests strategically positioned for what Megan would consider optimal dinner conversation. I found my card between Uncle Steve and Cousin Lisa's husband Derek, safely distanced from the head of the table where Megan and Ryan would preside. Classic Megan management. Ensuring I wouldn't be part of the main conversation flow. "Everyone, please find your seats," Megan announced, sweeping into the room carrying a gravy boat that completed the spread of food arranged artfully down the table. Turkey, cranberry sauce, 3 types of stuffing, roasted vegetables, and side dishes I couldn't even name covered every available surface. As we settled into our chairs, Ryan stood to pour wine, making sure to mention the vintage and the boutique vineyard it came from. "Not the wine Rebecca brought," I heard him whisper to Megan with a smile that was probably meant to be discreet. Once everyone was seated, Megan stood for the traditional toast. Her hair caught the candlelight as she raised her glass, looking every inch the successful hostess. "I'm so thankful to have our wonderful family gathered here today," she began. "It's been an incredible year for us. Ryan's Pacific Rim Resort project exceeded all projections. The children are thriving at Westmont Academy, and as some of you know, I've just been named Senior Marketing Director." She paused for the appreciative murmurs. "We're also excited to announce we've purchased a vacation home in Aspen, which we hope you'll all visit this winter." She continued listing achievements and acquisitions for another minute before concluding, and of course, we're glad everyone could make it today to share in our blessings. Her gaze swept the table, lingering just a beat too briefly on me before she raised her glass. To family, everyone echoed. I sipped my wine and reached for a roll, trying to focus on the food rather than the knot forming in my stomach. The dinner conversation followed its predictable path. My father discussed his department's new research grant. My mother detailed her latest legal victory. Uncle Steve talked about his expanding car dealership empire. The Carmichaels shared stories of their recent African safari. Through it all, Megan played the perfect moderator, asking just the right questions to highlight each person's success. Except mine. "Rebecca," Uncle Steve said suddenly, turning to me during a lull. "You've been quiet. What's new with you? Still in the military?" I felt all eyes shift to me, some curious, others clearly expecting a brief, unmemorable response. "Yes, I am," I replied, attempting to strike a balance between pride and humility. "Actually, I recently." "Rebecca helps with intelligence work," Megan interrupted, her tone suggesting she was clarifying something very simple. "Lots of reports and analysis. Very detail-oriented work." "That sounds interesting," Uncle Steve persisted, surprising me with his genuine interest. "What kind of intelligence?" I opened my mouth to provide a sanitized version of my role when Megan laughed lightly. "Oh, it's all very hush-hush. Isn't it, Rebecca? Lots of following orders and filing things properly, I imagine." A flash of heat rose to my cheeks. "It's a bit more complex than that." "Of course it is." Megan smiled condescendingly. "But not everyone can understand the corporate challenges I navigate daily." "Different worlds." Ryan jumped in. "Speaking of different worlds, we should tell everyone about the charity gala. Megan's company raised over $2 million for children's literacy." The conversation veered away again, and I focused on cutting my turkey into perfectly even pieces, willing the burning in my chest to subside. Halfway through the meal, Megan began discussing the family's planned summer vacation to Greece. "We've rented a villa in Santorini for 3 weeks," she announced. "Mom and Dad are joining us for the middle week." "That sounds wonderful," my mother beamed. I realized this was the first I'd heard of these plans. Not that I could have joined them anyway given my unpredictable schedule, but the assumption that I wouldn't be included stung nonetheless. "You should see the views from the infinity pool," Megan continued, pulling out her phone to show photos of the villa. "We'll have a private chef and boat tours of the islands. Some of us have to work during the summer," I said quietly, immediately regretting the comment. Megan's eyes narrowed slightly. "Well, when you choose a career with advancement opportunities, you earn vacation time." She smiled around the table. "Speaking of which, who else has exciting travel plans?" As others shared their upcoming cruises and European getaways, I felt increasingly out of place. My last vacation had been 3 days at Amanda's lake cabin, where we'd mostly slept and recovered from an intense operation. The conversation eventually turned to the children's table, where Megan's 2 perfect offspring were demonstrating impeccable manners. "Madison just tested into the gifted program," Megan announced proudly. "And Ethan's tennis coach says he could compete nationally by next year." Exceptional children. My father nodded approvingly. "They take after their mother." "It's really about providing the right opportunities," Megan responded. "People who have made something of themselves understand how to create paths for the next generation." The pointed comment hung in the air. I took a large sip of wine. Rebecca, my mother said suddenly, perhaps sensing the tension, didn't you mention a promotion last time we spoke? For a moment, I felt a flicker of appreciation for my mother's attempt to include me. Yes, actually. I was promoted to. More cranberry sauce, anyone? Megan interrupted, standing to pass the crystal dish. Mom, I used your recipe but added orange zest. The interruption was so smooth, so practiced, that I almost admired the skill behind it. Almost. As dessert was served, Megan regaled the table with stories of her department's latest marketing triumph, complete with mentions of celebrities I'd never heard of and vacation bonuses that exceeded my monthly salary. It's all about strategic thinking, she concluded, gesturing with her dessert fork. Seeing the big picture and making bold moves. Not everyone has that capacity. Some people are more comfortable just following orders, Ryan added, glancing at me. Right, Becca? Something in me snapped. After hours of subtle digs and dismissals, this direct tag team approach broke through my practiced patience. Actually, I said, my voice stronger than I intended. My role requires significant independent judgment and critical decision-making. I lead a team that analyzes sensitive information with national security implications. The table fell momentarily silent before Megan let out a light laugh. Oh, Rebecca, always so serious about your paperwork. She turned to the table with an indulgent smile. My sister. The soldier. Tell us, Rebecca, do you spend your days saluting people and marching around? A few uncomfortable chuckles rippled around the table. I felt my face burning. Years of built-up frustration threatening to spill over. But before I could respond, the doorbell rang, sharp and unexpected. Megan frowned. Who could that be? We're not expecting anyone else. Ryan pushed back from the table. I'll get it. As he left, Megan quickly redirected the conversation. Mom, tell everyone about your garden club award. My mother launched into a story about her prize-winning hydrangeas, and I used the moment to collect myself, breathing deeply and reminding myself that losing my composure would only reinforce their perception of me as the unstable underachiever. A minute later, Ryan returned to the dining room, a puzzled expression on his face. He whispered something in Megan's ear. She looked confused, then annoyed. Who is it? My mother asked. Someone for Rebecca, apparently, Megan said. An edge to her voice. A military person. All eyes turned to me. I was as confused as everyone else. I wasn't expecting anyone, and my unit knew I was on family leave. Then, a tall figure appeared in the dining room entrance, and the atmosphere in the room instantly changed. The man standing in the dining room doorway commanded attention without saying a word. Captain James Walker stood ramrod straight in his full dress uniform, cap tucked precisely under his arm. His presence seemed to immediately shrink the elaborate dining room, making Megan's carefully curated Thanksgiving tableau feel like a children's tea party. Conversation died instantly. The only sound was the gentle clink of a fork someone had dropped in surprise. Captain Walker's eyes scanned the room with practiced efficiency before locking onto me. Without hesitation, he snapped to attention and executed a perfect, formal salute. Major Rebecca Mitchell. United States Special Operations Command, he announced, his voice clear and authoritative. I apologize for the interruption, ma'am. The silence that followed was absolute. I could feel every pair of eyes in the room swing from Captain Walker to me and back again, like spectators at a tennis match they hadn't known they were attending. Megan's face underwent a remarkable transformation. The smug smile that had been fixed in place all evening dissolved into open-mouthed shock. My father's fork remained suspended halfway to his mouth. My mother looked as though someone had just told her the earth was flat. I stood automatically, military training taking over. Captain Walker, this is unexpected. Yes, ma'am. I apologize for interrupting your family gathering. His posture remained formal, though his eyes conveyed the urgency behind his appearance. "There's a situation that requires your immediate attention. Colonel Harrington sent me personally to brief you." Uncle Steve's whispered "Colonel Harrington" was audible in the stunned silence. "I see," I said, processing what this meant. Colonel Harrington wouldn't have sent a captain in dress uniform to find me unless something critical was happening. "We can speak privately." "What exactly is going on here?" Megan found her voice, though it had lost its usual confident edge. She looked between Captain Walker and me with growing confusion. Captain Walker addressed her with professional courtesy. "Ma'am, I'm not at liberty to discuss the details. I can only say that Major Mitchell's expertise is urgently required." "Major Mitchell?" my father repeated, staring at me as though seeing me for the first time. "Yes, sir," Captain Walker confirmed without elaboration. Ryan, who had been hovering uncertainly behind Captain Walker, finally moved to take his seat. "Your sister leads an intelligence operation," he said to Megan, looking dazed. "Did you know that?" Megan didn't answer. Her complexion had paled beneath her perfect makeup. "If you'll excuse me," I said to the table at large, finding a strange calm in the chaos of the moment. "Captain, shall we step outside?" As I moved to join him, Captain Walker added, "I should mention, Major Mitchell recently received a commendation for her leadership during Operation Northern Summit. Her intelligence assessment prevented what could have been a significant security breach and saved numerous lives." My mother gasped softly. Aunt Patricia murmured something that sounded like "good heavens." Megan remained frozen, her expression caught between disbelief and something I'd never seen directed at me before, respect, tinged with uncertainty. I followed Captain Walker into the hallway, closing the dining room door behind us to shield our conversation from eager ears. Once alone, we both relaxed slightly from our formal postures. "James, what's happening?" I asked quietly. "First, I apologize for the dramatic entrance," he said, lowering his voice. "Amanda called me." "Amanda?" I blinked in confusion. "My Amanda from the unit." He nodded. "She said you were dealing with a family situation where your achievements were being systematically diminished, particularly by your sister." She thought a little. External validation might help correct the record. I stared at him, processing this information. "So there's no emergency?" "No immediate national security threat, no," he admitted. "But Colonel Harrington did want me to inform you that the situation with the Andarko operation has developed. He's called a briefing for tomorrow morning at 0800. You're requested to attend, but it wasn't urgent enough to fully disrupt your leave." I shook my head, torn between amusement, gratitude, and embarrassment. "Amanda had no right to involve you in my family drama." "She cares about you," he said simply. "We all do. Your work is too important to be dismissed as following orders and filing paperwork." His perfect mimicry of Megan's condescending tone made it clear he'd been listening from the hallway. Despite everything, I felt a smile tugging at my lips. "Well, your timing was impeccable." My sister was just hitting her stride. "Happy to serve, Major." He returned the smile briefly before resuming his professional demeanor. "However, the briefing tomorrow is legitimate. I can provide transportation at 0700 if needed." "I'll be there," I assured him. "My own transportation should be fine." He nodded, then hesitated. "For what it's worth, Major, everyone at command holds you in the highest regard. Your sister may not understand what you do, but those of us who do are grateful." The simple sincerity in his voice touched me more than I expected. "Thank you, Captain." "I should take my leave and allow you to return to your family," he said. "I believe they may have some questions." "I believe they might," I agreed dryly. He smiled again, briefly. "Good luck, Major. Sometimes family operations can be the most challenging." With a final crisp salute, Captain Walker turned and left. I stood in the hallway for a moment, gathering my thoughts before returning to face a dining room full of relatives whose entire perception of me had just been upended. I wasn't sure whether to thank Amanda or strangle her the next time we spoke. Probably both. Taking a deep breath, I turned and pushed open the dining room door, stepping back into a family gathering that would never be quite the same again. When I re-entered the dining room, it was as if I'd stepped onto a movie set where the director had just called freeze. Every person remained exactly as I'd left them, forks suspended, mouths slightly open. Eyes fixed on the doorway where I now stood. Megan recovered first, her socialite training kicking into smooth over the awkward silence. "Is everything all right, Rebecca?" Her voice had a new, cautious quality, as if she was suddenly unsure of the rules of engagement between us. "Yes," I replied, moving toward my seat. "Just a work matter that needed attention." "Work matter," my father repeated slowly. "Major Mitchell." I met his gaze as I sat down. "Yes, you're a major." This from my mother, her tone somewhere between accusation and awe. "When did that happen?" "My promotion came through last month," I said, taking a sip of water. I would have mentioned it earlier, but the conversation seemed focused elsewhere. Uncle Steve leaned forward, his earlier interest now amplified. "Special Operations Command? That sounds serious, Rebecca." "It is," I confirmed simply. "But what exactly do you do?" Ryan asked, curiosity overcoming his usual disinterest in my career. I considered my response carefully. "I lead an intelligence team that analyzes and synthesizes information from various sources to support operational planning and execution. Most of the specifics are classified." "Classified?" Cousin Lisa echoed, looking at me with new eyes. "Like actual government secrets?" "Something like that," I smiled slightly. "And that officer," my father pressed. "He called you Major Mitchell. He saluted you." "Captain Walker, yes. He's a pilot with significant operational experience." My mother set down her wine glass with a sharp click. "Rebecca, why didn't you tell us? All this time, we thought you were just following orders and filing paperwork." I supplied, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "Just playing soldier." As Megan put it. Megan flinched visibly. "I didn't mean." "Yes, you did," I said quietly. "You've always meant it. All of you have always assumed I settled for less because I couldn't achieve more. The truth is, I chose a different path, one that happens to involve classified work and, yes, a significant level of responsibility." A heavy silence fell over the table. Madison, Megan's 9-year-old daughter, broke it with childish directness. "Aunt Rebecca, do you catch bad guys?" she asked, eyes wide with new interest. I couldn't help but smile. "Not personally, no. But I help the people who sometimes do." "That's so cool." Ethan, her 7-year-old brother, chimed in. "Do you have a gun, Ethan?" Megan admonished, though without her usual confidence. "I'm qualified on several weapons systems," I told him. "But my job is mostly about using my brain, not weapons." "Like a spy?" Madison pressed. "Not exactly," I laughed. "More like a puzzle solver. I look at lots of different pieces of information and help figure out what they mean and what we should do about them." "Is it dangerous?" This came from my father, his expression a mixture of concern and something I'd rarely seen directed at me, respect. "Sometimes the operations I support involve risk," I acknowledged. "But I'm usually working from secure facilities." Uncle Steve whistled low. "And here we all thought you were pushing papers somewhere. No wonder you never talk about your work." "I can't talk about most of it," I corrected gently. Ryan was studying me with new interest. "So that commendation the captain mentioned is also classified in its specifics." I finished for him. "But yes, our team's work helped prevent a potentially serious situation." "Why didn't you wear your uniform today?" Aunt Patricia asked. "All those medals and such?" I resisted the urge to sigh. "Because I'm here as Rebecca, your niece, not Major Mitchell. My work doesn't define me any more than Megan's job defines her." At the mention of her name, All eyes shifted to Megan, who sat unnaturally still at the head of the table. Her perfect hostess composure had cracked, revealing something vulnerable underneath. "I think this calls for more wine," my mother announced, reaching for the bottle. "Rebecca, dear, you must tell us what you can about your career." I had no idea the military offered such advancement. The way she said advancement made it clear that until 10 minutes ago, she had considered my military service as something slightly shameful, a fallback for those without better options. As my mother refilled glasses and my father peppered me with questions about my security clearance, I noticed Megan slipping quietly from the room. Despite everything, a twinge of guilt hit me. This wasn't how I'd wanted things to play out. The rest of dessert passed in a blur of questions I mostly couldn't answer and newfound attention I wasn't entirely comfortable with. The children regarded me with awestruck expressions, Ethan whispering loudly to his sister that his aunt was probably like Black Widow from the Avengers. After 30 minutes of this, I excused myself, citing the early briefing Captain Walker had mentioned. The protests were immediate and unfamiliar. "But you just got here. We have so many questions. Can't you stay the night as planned?" "I'm sorry," I said, standing firm. "Duty calls. I'll be back for Christmas if my schedule allows." My parents walked me to the door, my mother suddenly fussing over whether I had eaten enough, and my father asking if the military provided appropriate security for someone of your importance. I assured them I was well taken care of and promised to call soon. As I retrieved my overnight bag, I found Megan in the guest room, sitting on the edge of the bed. She looked up as I entered, her expression unreadable. "You're leaving," she said. Not a question. "I have an early briefing tomorrow," I replied, gathering my things. "Were you ever going to tell us?" Her voice was quiet, lacking its usual confident edge. "About being a major, about your importance." I paused, considering. Would it have mattered, Megan? Would you have believed it was real achievement if I had? She looked away. "I don't know." The honesty in her answer surprised me. "I need to go," I said, slinging my bag over my shoulder. "Rebecca," she called as I reached the door. "I'm sorry for what I said about following orders and all of it." I turned back to look at my sister, really look at her. Perhaps for the first time in years. Behind the perfect makeup and designer clothes sat a woman whose entire identity was built on being exceptional, on being the best. How threatening must it be to discover that the sister she had dismissed for years was exceptional in ways she couldn't even comprehend. "We'll talk later," I said simply, not ready to accept or reject her apology. "Happy Thanksgiving, Megan." As I drove away from the picture-perfect house with its picture-perfect hostess, I felt oddly light. Not triumphant, exactly, but unburdened. For the first time in my adult life, my family had seen a glimpse of who I really was and what I had accomplished. Their reaction, shock, reassessment. Newfound respect didn't matter as much as I might have expected. What mattered was that I no longer had to carry the weight of their misconceptions alone, and for that unexpected liberation, I had Amanda and Captain Walker to thank. I pulled over at the first quiet stretch of road and dialed Amanda's number. "So," she answered on the first ring. "How was the Megan show this year?" "You," I said, "are either the best friend I've ever had or completely insane." "Possibly both." Her laughter filled the car as I pulled back onto the road, heading toward home and the real world where I had built a life that needed no explanation or apology. 1 week after the Thanksgiving revelation, I sat at my desk reviewing intelligence reports on an emerging situation in Eastern Europe. My office, a windowless room deep within a secure facility, contained nothing personal except a small photo of Amanda and me at her lake cabin last summer. No family photos. No holiday snapshots. Until recently, those worlds had remained deliberately separate. A knock at my door pulled me from my analysis. "Enter," I called, expecting one of my team members with the satellite imagery I had requested. Instead, the door opened to reveal my assistant. looking uncomfortable. "Ma'am, there's a civilian visitor at the main gate." Megan Thompson?" "She says she's your sister." I stared at him, momentarily speechless. "Megan was here? At my high-security workplace? Did she say why she's here?" "No, ma'am. Just that she needs to speak with you urgently." I checked my watch. 1100 hours on a Wednesday. Megan should have been at her office, overseeing whatever major marketing campaign currently occupied her department. "I'll meet her at the visitor center," I decided, standing and straightening my uniform. "Thank you, specialist." 20 minutes and several security checkpoints later, I entered the visitor center to find Megan sitting stiffly on a standard-issue chair, looking entirely out of place in her designer suit and immaculate hair. She stood when she saw me, uncertainty flashing across her face. "Rebecca," she said, then corrected herself. "Major Mitchell, I mean." "Rebecca is fine," I replied, studying her. "This is unexpected." "Can we talk somewhere?" she asked, glancing around the sparse, government-issue reception area. I led her to a small conference room used for non-classified meetings with external contacts. Once the door closed behind us, Megan seemed to deflate slightly, her perfect posture softening. "I took a personal day," she said, answering my unasked question. "I drove 3 hours to get here. I didn't know if they would even let me see you. It's a secure facility, but we do allow visitors in designated areas," I explained, taking a seat across from her. "What's so urgent, Megan?" She placed her designer handbag carefully on the table and folded her hands. "I needed to talk to you. About Thanksgiving. About everything." I waited, giving her space to continue. "You left so quickly, and then Mom and Dad couldn't stop talking about you all weekend. Major Mitchell this and Rebecca's important position that." A hint of the old bitterness crept into her voice before she visibly reined it in. "Sorry, that's not why I came." "Why did you come?" I asked directly. "Because I owe you an apology. A real one, not the half-hearted version I gave you while you were leaving." She met my eyes, and I was surprised to see genuine emotion there. "I've been terrible to you, Rebecca. For years. Decades, really." "Yes, you have," I agreed, not unkindly. She winced but nodded. "I deserved that. The thing is, I never really saw you. Not the real you. I was so busy being the successful daughter, the perfect Megan, that I needed you to be less. Does that make sense?" "More than you might think," I said. "We all need our narratives. But my narrative was built on diminishing yours, and that was wrong." She took a deep breath. "When that captain showed up, when I saw how he looked at you with such respect, how he saluted you and called you Major, I realized I've spent my whole life assuming I knew who you were, that I was better than you. And I was completely wrong." The raw honesty in her voice caught me off guard. This wasn't the polished, calculated Megan I knew. "I've achieved things too," I said after a moment. "They're just not things you valued." "Because I didn't understand them," she admitted. "Or because I didn't want to. It was easier to believe you had settled for less than to consider you might have found something meaningful that I couldn't quantify in my success metrics." I leaned back in my chair, studying my sister. "Why are you really here, Megan?" An apology could have been made over the phone. She fidgeted with her wedding ring, a rare display of nervousness. "I wanted to see it. Your world. To understand what you do, or at least as much as you can share. I realize I don't know my own sister, and that's my fault." The admission hung between us, honest and vulnerable in a way Megan rarely allowed herself to be. "Most of what I do is classified," I reminded her. "I can't give you a tour or explain my current projects." "I know. But I thought maybe we could have lunch. You could tell me what you can about your career, how you got here." "I'd like to listen this time. Really listen." I considered her request. Years of competitive dynamics and subtle undermining weren't going to disappear with one conversation. But the fact that Megan had driven 3 hours and humbled herself enough to come to my territory suggested she was genuinely trying. There's a cafe about a mile from here, I said finally. I can take an early lunch. Relief softened her features. Thank you. Over sandwiches at the modest cafe frequented by base personnel, I shared what I could about my career path. The early challenges of basic training. Finding my niche in intelligence analysis. The mentors who had recognized potential in me that my family had missed. Megan listened with an attention I'd never experienced from her, asking thoughtful questions and actually waiting for my answers. When I explained the general nature of my work, analyzing intelligence to support operational planning, she nodded with growing understanding. So you're basically the brain behind the operations, she said. The person who sees the patterns and connections others might miss. That's part of it, I acknowledged. I lead a team of analysts now, but yes, pattern recognition has always been my strength. That makes sense, she said softly. You were always watching, always noticing things the rest of us missed. The observation surprised me. I hadn't realized she had noticed anything about me at all. Can I ask you something? She said after a pause. Why didn't you ever tell us? About your promotions, your real role? I considered the question. At first, it was because much of my work was classified. Then, as time went on, it became clear that the family narrative was firmly established. I was the underachiever. You were the star. Anything that contradicted that story was uncomfortable for everyone. Including you? She asked perceptively. I nodded slowly. Including me. It was easier, in some ways, to be underestimated. No expectations to live up to, no family pressure to be perfect. God, the pressure, Megan sighed, a crack appearing in her perfect facade. Do you know how exhausting it is? Being the one everyone expects to succeed, to dazzle, to achieve? Sometimes I envy you, Rebecca. I nearly choked on my water. You envy me. Your freedom. Your purpose. She gestured vaguely. You do work that actually matters. I convince people to buy luxury products they don't need. Your work has value too, I said automatically. She waved this away. It pays well and keeps me in designer shoes. But at the end of the day, what am I contributing? You're protecting national security. I'm selling lifestyle enhancements to the already privileged. The role reversal felt surreal. Megan, questioning her perfect life? Admitting to envying mine? We made different choices. I said carefully. Neither is inherently better or worse. But we never acknowledged that, did we? I needed my choices to be better. To be the best. She met my eyes directly. I'm sorry, Rebecca, for making you feel less than. For not seeing you. The simple apology, delivered without qualifications or excuses, loosened something tight in my chest. Thank you, I said quietly. We finished our lunch with lighter conversation, finding our way through new territory as sisters who were actually trying to know each other. Before we parted, Megan surprised me again. Would you come for dinner next weekend? Just you, me, and Ryan. No parents, no audience, no performance. I'll check my schedule, I said, not ready to commit immediately. Things can change quickly in my line of work. Of course. She hesitated, then added, and maybe someday you could bring someone? A friend or... That captain seemed nice. I laughed. Captain Walker is a colleague, not a romantic interest. Well, whoever you'd like then. Maybe that Amanda you mentioned? I'd like to meet the people who are important to you. The offer felt genuine, a first step toward a new kind of relationship. I'll think about it, I promised. 2 weeks later, I sat in my parents' living room, watching a transformation unfold. My mother, who had spent decades highlighting Megan's achievements while glossing over mine, now proudly showed her Bridge Club friends the carefully sanitized newspaper article about a commendation ceremony I had participated in. My daughter, the major, she kept saying, with the same pride she had once reserved exclusively for Megan. My father had taken to calling me for advice on world events, as if my military intelligence role made me an expert on everything from stock market fluctuations to climate change. I gently redirected these conversations, but appreciated the effort behind them. Most surprising was the change in Megan herself. The competitive edge that had defined our relationship since childhood had softened. During a family dinner where our parents continued to overcompensate by focusing almost exclusively on my career, Megan caught my eye across the table and gave me a small, understanding smile. She knew what it was like to be the focus of that spotlight, with all its warmth and pressure. Later that evening, as we helped clear dishes, she whispered, "Is this weird for you too?" "Beyond weird," I admitted. "I keep waiting for someone to tell me I loaded the dishwasher wrong." She laughed, a genuine sound without the performative quality her laughter usually carried. "Give it time. They'll adjust to having two successful daughters eventually." "Two different but equally valuable daughters," I corrected gently. She nodded, accepting the amendment. That's what I meant. The following month, I brought Amanda to Sunday brunch at my parents' house. Her presence, with her direct military bearing and no-nonsense attitude, initially overwhelmed my mother. But by the end of the meal, they were laughing together over Amanda's stories about our early training days. "You should have seen Rebecca the first time we had to rappel from a helicopter," Amanda told them, ignoring my warning glare. "Pale as a ghost, but determined not to show it." "Heights were never my thing," I admitted. "But you did it anyway," my father said, with newfound appreciation. "That's character." "That's Rebecca," Megan added quietly. "She always had more courage than the rest of us." The comment, offered without fanfare or expectation, meant more to me than all the exaggerated praise that had followed the Thanksgiving revelation. As spring turned to summer, a new balance emerged in our family. Not perfect, nothing involving human relationships ever is, but healthier. More honest. Megan and I began a tradition of monthly sister dinners, alternating between our homes, where we were gradually learning how to be friends as well as siblings. During one such dinner at my apartment, Megan examined the few personal photos I had displayed. She paused at an image of me with my team after a particularly challenging operation, all of us exhausted but smiling with the special camaraderie that comes from shared purpose and trials. "You found your people," she observed. "I did," I agreed. "Just not where anyone expected me to, including you." I considered this. Maybe especially me. I never thought I'd find my strength in a system built on hierarchy and rules. "But you did, because you saw beyond the surface," she said thoughtfully, "something I've never been very good at." "We're learning," I offered. She turned to me, expression serious. "I have a question, and you can tell me if it's out of bounds. Do you think you would have risen so high, worked so hard, if you hadn't been trying to prove yourself? To us, I mean." The question caught me off guard with its insight. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "Initially, maybe there was an element of that. But somewhere along the way, it became about the work itself. About making a difference in ways that matter to me." She nodded, seeming satisfied with my answer. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. Not because some captain saluted you or because you have an important title, but because you found your path and had the courage to follow it, even when none of us understood." Coming from Megan, these words held a weight that no official commendation could match. They represented a recognition not just of what I did, but of who I was. "Thank you," I said simply. As we settled into dinner, I realized that the validation I had unconsciously sought for years had finally arrived. Not in the form of family awe at my classified work or military rank, but in something far more valuable, being seen and accepted for exactly who I was. Sometimes the most important recognition comes not from outside authorities or formal accolades, but from those whose opinions have shaped our sense of self since childhood. And sometimes, the greatest victory isn't in proving others wrong, but in finding the strength to define success on your own terms. What about you? Has someone in your life ever underestimated you, only to be surprised by what you've accomplished? Or have you found yourself in Megan's position, realizing you misjudged someone close to you? Drop a comment below and share your story. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to hear more stories about family dynamics, personal growth, and finding your own path even when others don't see your potential. Thank you for listening. And remember, true validation comes from within, but sometimes it takes an unexpected salute to help others see what was there all along.